There are hundreds of videos that haven't been launched on YouTube on Patreon. Make sure you guys join the Patreon to help us grow. We are MythVision. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. Your host, Eric Lambert. Lately, I've been discussing a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witness material with people who've been traumatized by this cult. Now, I get it. A lot of you might be saying, well, that cult, this cult, isn't all Christianity? Isn't all of these religions somewhat cultish? Yeah, you're right. But some are more damaging than others. And the more you investigate and research, you find that out. Hearing it from the stories of a lot of these people who've come out of these cults, you realize the trauma there, and it's like a broken relationship. It really is. And the person I'm going to be interviewing today, he goes by the name Mentally Diseased, and his real name is Jeremy. What's up? Welcome to the channel, my friend.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I want to say up front, man, your name is Mentally Diseased. I want everybody to go YouTube, search Mentally Diseased, subscribe to your channel, go down there. You got a Patreon, you're on Twitter, you're on all the social media handles, platforms, if you will, and go show you some love. I really ask all my people who watch this stuff to do so, because I think what you're going to say today is going to touch somebody, and it's going to really educate us on things we've never understood before, maybe never heard, even from the other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that I've interviewed. So why the name Mentally Diseased?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. The biggest and most obvious reason, at least for XJWs, is mentally diseased is what they call people that leave their religion. You're a mentally diseased apostate, and they say that because I mean, it's part of the programming, but they basically indoctrinate people to believe that if you leave the religion and become an apostate, you have an actual contagious disease. And if anybody listens to you, you will catch that disease. So you'll see there's a lot of videos on YouTube of people doing what they call Kingdom Hall crashing, where they go into like a Kingdom Hall service or a church service, and they crash it to talk about, you know, whatever happened to them as abuse survivors or whatever. And like people just freeze and shut down and freak out and cover their ears because they really do believe that this mentally diseased apostate is going to infect them with their apostasy. So that's kind of where it came from, to just kind of make a joke out of it and say, well, I'm mentally diseased, and maybe they'll watch my stuff and see that I'm a pretty happy guy. Actually, I'm not really crazy. So yeah, that's the biggest reason.
I think that as much as you're making light of it, and I respect that, because sometimes you got to make light of the serious stuff. That's a serious thing to say about a human. That's a serious thing to say about anyone, to run around talking about, because you think differently, you're mentally diseased. That's a bold claim to come from the church like that. Now, I get it. Christians might do, oh, they're demon possessed, or Satan has controlled their thinking, or stuff like that. But that's like almost like a diagnosis in a sense, to make that kind of claim. And, you know, I work in the mental health arena, if you will, and deal with people who are struggling with drug addiction and other mental health issues. And to make that kind of statement and diagnose someone because they believe differently is serious. So I love the name. I honestly do. Like, people are like, well, you're an ex-addict. And I go, dude, I'm the biggest junkie of them all, right? Like, I just say that to say, like, for those who are in active addiction, like, it's okay to take the name that I've done these drugs, that I've struggled with addiction, and I respect what you do. Jeremy, I also want to go ahead and get the cat out of the bag, if you will. You're actually an open homosexual, someone who is in the LGBTQ community, and you are speaking out for people who don't have that voice. And I want to say I'm thankful for you being open and honest in saying this, but I want to dig into the trauma a little, if you're okay with that today.
Oh, sure. Why not?
I know, right? See, I love you're making light of this, because I bet it wasn't that way not too long ago when you were in this. What was it like being in a church that calls this an abomination? There's got to be a psychological insanity on you. Like, you had to have fought your natural inclination. And how did that work, and what happened, if you don't mind?
Yeah, well, it was pretty awful. Because right around the time that a person hits puberty is around the time that they expect people to start getting baptized. And baptism for Jehovah's Witnesses is a lot like Scientology's 1,000-year contract. So it's like if you are making the decision to get baptized, because Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they're not ever going to die, and if they do die, they're going to be resurrected and they're going to live forever. So this contract is really a forever kind of thing. You're getting baptized, you are committing to Jehovah that you're never going to screw up again, or you give him personal permission to smite you, basically. So I was actually really into the religion at the time. I had all of these goals. I was really excited about all of it. And then I started to realize that I was gay. And that put a damper on everything. So at the time in my life when I should have been getting baptized, really wanted to get baptized, I felt like I had to deal with this first in order to do that, in order to make that step. So essentially, I was trying to self conversion therapy is what I ended up having to do, because I was they lock up so much of their information. You're not really allowed to look at outside sources of information. They have books that tell you everything about what you're supposed to think about everything. So I'm flipping through like Watchtower and Awake magazines for like, what are gay people supposed to do? Like, is this something that they can help me with or whatever? And they didn't really say much. They just said like, basically, you have to stop being gay or you're going to die. But luckily people have changed, so you'll be fine. It's basically all that there was. There wasn't really like a method or like anything really helpful to me. So I went online, and just looking up online like how to do something like this is also trouble. But I basically like started keeping safety pins in my pocket, and I jabbed myself in the thigh anytime I had a thought, try and associate pain with whatever sexual thoughts that I was having. And that kind of thing, it just never worked. But I was doing this for years as a teenager, trying to get through it, all just to get baptized. And the stigma for not getting baptized was building and building. Like, people are starting to look at you like, what is the matter? Why aren't you baptized yet? Don't you know Armageddon is coming? And if you're not baptized, you're going to die in Armageddon. Don't you care about that? Don't you care about your family? Don't you care about this? Don't you it's like, I care about all of these things, but also like, I can't stop looking at this dude.
I get it. And I have to say, for those watching, you're not alone. I used to go down to this thing called Trojans for Christ at my high school. They had a little Christian group type thing every morning before class. And I'd go down there. I'd talk to one of the leaders, Michael Davies. I'll never forget his name. And I used to go down there almost every other day. You got to pray for me again, man. What's wrong? I masturbated again. I watched pornography, and I'm like, I can't, I don't know why. And he'd lay his hands on me, and they spoke in tongues, man. So it was like a really non-denominational type thing. And somehow the Spirit was going to empower me to not struggle and fall down. And I do it every time I turn around. I mean, I don't have a strict schedule. It would happen. And I couldn't understand why I naturally kept doing that. And it's mental terror. It's psychological horror, because you are doing something that is wrong and can get you hell. It can get you judgment. It can get you punishment from the God that supposedly loves you. And yet at the same time, you keep doing it. And like, you can't understand why you keep doing that and how to connect the two. It was oil and water. And I know exactly that horror in a different way. I mean, I'm a heterosexual, but dude, you and me are humans, man. And what we're doing to each other psychologically with this stuff is horrible. So I had to just say that so that you feel more comfortable knowing like this conversation can go wherever you want it to. And I totally non-judgmentally love you and know that I get where you're coming from, So that being said, I tried the covenant eyes thing where I was like, my pastor had control over my emails and knew if I was looking online to watch porn. I tried everything. I tried a lot of different things. And finally, when I stopped having this secret, invisible father figure looking down on me, wondering if I was going to do right or wrong. It was like I didn't have to do it as often. It's like it wasn't
Yeah.
something that I was obsessed over, and it was weird. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I understand, and that was exactly the same case for me after I left Witnesses and I came out, and like it's my sexuality is the least interesting thing about me now. When it was back then, when you're trying to suppress it, like that's all you could think about it. That's it's so much worse when you're trying to hide it than just accepting it, and just now it's like who cares?
Yeah,
No,
nothing. What
it's
was
not
did
something I
someone
think
find
about.
out while you were in the church? Did you talk to someone, confide in someone, and something bad happened?
No,
Or
absolutely not. I was terrified, absolutely terrified of anybody finding out, which made it really hard because I didn't feel comfortable going to the elders and asking them for help because I knew like the risk is too great. It's
Mhm.
way too great because you never know if they're actually going to help you or if they're just going to kick you out. And the thing with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's a very insular, isolated community where you're not allowed to talk to people that aren't witnesses unless you're trying to convert them. And if they're not going to be converted, then you stop talking to them. So if they decide to punish you by shunning you, then you're screwed. Because you don't know anybody, you haven't been allowed to talk to anybody else. So it's very frightening when you're in that situation. And I also lived in like a small town and I was homeschooled, so like I was really isolated. Just like this was all I had as far as social interaction. The internet was real like locked down. You couldn't really do much. You weren't allowed to do much on it. So yeah, I was too scared. Eventually, eventually a couple people found out that were very close to me, because I would like go to like gay.com or something, which was the big thing back then, which isn't really, it's not a porn site, it's a chat room site. And I was just like trying to like get some information on maybe they know something. So a couple people would catch my ill hidden uh internet history
Right.
there. One of them was a person, I had a girlfriend that I was trying to force myself straight with, like a beard, I guess is what we call them, a beard. And so she knew about it, but she was convinced that I was bisexual and she was going to help me overcome my gay tendencies, as they put it. But that didn't work out. We ended up breaking up, and she started dating my best friend at the time, and he found out that way. And he also was trying to like help me get over my gay tendencies. But what was interesting is they were like they were pretty supportive, at least as far as Jehovah's Witnesses go, until I came out and left. And then it was like gone. I haven't spoken to them since.
Wow.
Nothing. Even though they knew that whole time and we're cool with keeping the secret. And I know that they had done worse, because while I was like stabbing myself in the thigh with a safety pin, much less like I wasn't even masturbating. I was just tormenting myself. These two were having sex.
Right.
And they're still in it. They're still,
And they
good.
weren't married or anything,
They
so,
weren't married. They were teenagers, and they're still in good standing Jehovah's Witnesses. It's just a very, very different standards for some people than others.
if I may, let's backtrack a little, because this is great that we hit the hard parts up front in terms of, the obvious. Were you born into this, and were your parents Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah. I was born into it. My parents actually had just converted when I was born. So they were brand new, fresh baby face Jehovah's Witnesses. And they really took it seriously, because it was like the end is coming. The end is coming right now. And that's a really weird world to grow up in, that I have a difficult time trying to convey to other people what it's like to, to grow up and live your life like Armageddon could happen tomorrow. Like, you don't make plans. You don't, because it could happen next week. You don't plan for
Wow.
anything. You don't like budget your money. You don't like, you you take out loans on houses and cars that you can't afford because Armageddon is coming and you're not going to have to pay it off anyway. You know, I ended up not really going to school. They pulled me out of school in 5th grade because it was like, what is the point in putting you through high school when Armageddon's coming? The diploma is going to do you no good in paradise. So yeah,
Wow.
it was really weird. It's kind of like the detachment from the world and all of that. Have you seen M. Night Shyamalan's The Village?
I'm not so sure. Maybe that sounds familiar.
It's well, it's a good movie. You should watch it. It's very much like living in that movie where it's like these people living in a village that are completely cut off from the rest of the world. They don't even the movie feels like it's set in like the 1800s the whole time, and then you find out that they're actually in modern times. They're just cut off from everybody. That's very much what it is like. It's just totally, you're living in a totally different world even though you're right next door.
I can relate to the apocalyptic anticipation, and in some sense, when I was pre-mill dispensational in the Christian church, I was thinking the rapture's coming. You know, in fact, the pastor, which was a woman at the house church, which goes against what Paul says, but anyway, I digress. She was a woman, a prophetic type woman too. We spoke in tongues, like I said, and prophesied, and she actually said he would come back before she died. Well, she's dead now, but she, you know, she thought he was going to come back in her lifetime because the Lord had told her, you know, and things like that. So I kind of grew up in something similar, not quite on the level. You guys really take it to the next level, but yeah, were they converted by some random pioneers? And did you pioneer in your own experience as a Jehovah's Witness?
I did not pioneer. My mom pioneered uh, a little bit. She was not what they call an auxiliary pioneer, which is like a part-time pioneer. I don't really remember how they got hooked onto it. My dad was the first to get onto it. What's interesting, actually, related to your story, is both of my parents were recovering addicts,
Hmm.
and this was kind of how the witnesses got a hold of them, because they were, you know, my dad was a drug dealer, and you know, they'd had a lot of close calls and were really messing up their life. And my dad's oldest son had died in his crib. He was like 8 months old.
Wow.
So he was really torn up about the death of his son and like really going off the deep end with the drugs. And that's exactly the type of person Jehovah's Witnesses look for and target when they're going door to door, because they're the most susceptible to being brainwashed and indoctrinated and brought into all of that. And that's exactly what happened. So they brought my dad in and my mom in. And I do have to say that it did clean them up. They did get clean. So that was a positive. And they were the type of people that needed, my dad especially, that needed structure and being told what to do and all of this. So that's how he got into it. And he's actually ended up converting a lot of, he came from a really big family of like 12 brothers and sisters, and he's converted a lot of them afterwards. So I don't even talk
Wow.
to a lot of that side of the family anymore either.
What about your parents?
So my dad is still a witness. We don't talk. My brother is kind of in and out and in and out and in and out. But my mom is totally out now. She left probably 8 years or so after I did. And we have a great relationship now. I'm very lucky. I have a great relationship with my mom.
Good for your mom, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying not good for your dad, but that's good for your mom. But I understand why your dad's doing that. Are your mom and dad, if you don't mind me asking, are they still together in light of this?
No, they separated. They didn't have a good marriage.
Okay.
I didn't have a good relationship with my dad, so I don't miss him. He was very abusive growing up. He's definitely a narcissist
Mhm.
and very manipulative person. So, which is also like he fits right in with Jehovah's Witnesses, because like those types of people, they move through the ranks real high there. They do very well, because all of the structure, all of the religious structure is the same sort of abuse that those sort of people naturally inflict on others. So she was always looking for a way to get out of her relationship with him. But the thing with witnesses and a lot of other religions is you can't divorce unless he either dies or cheats on you. So she was waiting for him to die or cheat on her. She was like, you know what? I don't believe this anymore. Anyway, I'm out of here. So she
Yeah.
left, and she's remarried now and very, very happy. Happier than I've ever
Good.
seen her.
Well, I'm happy for that, man. I know that's a lot of personal. And I asked that because, man, so many people are going to see how raw this is, and they're going to relate, and they're going to go, wow, this is real life. Let's talk about your escape, if you will, your conversion out, your conversion to reality and to the world around you. I'm sure it was gradual. Most people don't have like a twinkling of an eye and then out of nowhere, everything's just clear to them and they're just
Yeah.
out. What happened? What led you to doubt? I'm sure it didn't help having to prick yourself and fighting
Yeah.
natural inclinations, which really aren't harmful. They're harmless in many respects. They can be. Anything you do can be abused, guys. Anything you
Yeah.
do can go too far. But what happened to you? Did you find a doctrine that started to make you think, is this real, or what happened?
Well, it was after years of stabbing myself, that I was praying and praying and praying, and it just felt like, this stabbing myself isn't working, and
Yeah.
Jehovah isn't listening. Nobody's helping me here. So I gave up after a while, and people were getting really judgmental of me for not getting baptized yet, and I wasn't going to go there. So I just started to lose faith a little bit. I still believed at my core that they had the truth and that they had everything right, but I also had never researched any other religion, so how could I know that? Um, so I started to think, well, if this is the trip and I'm not going to fix this and I'm going to die in Armageddon anyway, I mean, I might as well die for a good reason. Let's party.
Right.
So I hopped online and I started to really try to meet other people. And it wasn't necessarily just other gay people. It was just other people, just people that aren't witnesses. And I made a few friends and they started to talk to me and they found out I was a witness and they tried to reason me out of my beliefs, which didn't really work very well. I was very argumentative and always right about everything. Um, but it did put chinks in my armor, all of the questions they had, it did chink the armor a bit. It planted some seeds. And so I'd start to read books I wasn't allowed to read, stuff like Neil Gaiman's American Gods, and I don't know, played like Xenogears and things like that. Just like stuff that's a little more critical of religion and presents religion in a different way than I hadn't noticed it before. And I started to see like how many other religions actually believe very similar things. How can we act like we have this like great truth when like, Westboro Baptist Church over there almost believes exactly the same thing we do. Um, so
Maybe minus some of the predestinarian stuff, but yeah, they view everything an abomination and they go pretty far. So
they're very similar. They're just a lot more vocal about it than witnesses are. Witnesses are very good at hiding what they think.
Mm.
But anyway, this all culminated with me eventually meeting someone, a gay person online that I was going to meet. And because I'd never met another gay person before. I wanted to know what they were actually like. Are they like really mentally diseased and crazy? So there was a point where my parents were gone. They were going to a convention that's like this big Jehovah's Witness thing. You go to a convention for a weekend. I was going to catch another convention for another area the next week. I told my parents I had to work. I didn't. So I had this person over, and my mom she's got like some crazy sixth sense or something, and she's very nosy. She knew something was up. And so I had this guy over, and we weren't even doing anything. We were just talking. I knew what to do with a person. I didn't know. I was just awkwardly talking, and my mom rolls up in the driveway, and I'm like, crap. And I knew that she knew. So I'd like take this guy, and he was a like 6'5" cop that was, by the way, he was way older than he should have been meeting me at the time because I was like 17.
Oh.
I shove him under the bed, and my mom comes in and she sees his like legs sticking out like it's the Wizard of Oz, and she knows exactly what's going on. I don't even have to. I think she'd suspected it for a while. And so she left and she went to the elders. And I don't think she didn't go to the elders to tattle on me like it sounds. She went to the elders because that's what you're trained to do. Like, you go to the elders for anything and they're going to tell you how to handle this. They're going to have the answers and they're going to fix it. Well, their answer was, well, you have no reason to talk to your son anymore. You need to kick him out and stop talking to him. And so when I saw my mom again, she came by and she had a bundle of letters that she'd collected from all of my friends and everybody. And all of the letters were my friends basically telling me that we can't talk anymore. And here's a bunch of Bible scriptures. And,
Wow.
sorry, not sorry. We're not talking again until you come back to Jehovah. And then I was out, with nowhere to go, no one to talk to except the people I'd met online, but I no longer had internet service. This was like the 2000s. So my cell phone didn't have the internet. I was cut off from everything and everybody. And the only phone number that I had was this 6 foot tall cop guy that was in his mid to late 20s that going after a 17-year-old. So that's who I called. And of course, he ended up being very predatory as well. And he was more than delighted to come and pick me up and move me out to his place, which was like this cabin in the middle of the woods, also even more cut off than I'd been before. And he basically kept me there as like a pet. I couldn't find a job. I couldn't go anywhere. But that's a whole other thing. But that's kind of how I got out. But I still believed it was the truth. I still believed it for a very long time. It took a long time of just living for me to really get it all out of my head.
Wow. Man, I can't imagine, because I'm sure in your mind, when you left, all the words from the elders and the teachings of the church about your lifestyle start to make you even doubt yourself. Like, you know what I'm saying? When that's all you know and that's bad and that's a no-no, especially when that's all you know, and then you end up going off, you meeting this guy, things aren't really going the way you thought they would even, you're probably thinking the church was right. Damn it, the church was right.
Yes.
I'm wrong.
Exactly. And they set you up that way. They set you up specifically for what happened to me to happen, because when they're always warning you, like, if you ever leave, that the world is terrible. The world is going to eat you up and spit you out, and you're going to come crawling back to Jehovah. And, if you make sure that you have control over a person's entire social structure and all of their support systems, and you can turn that on and off with a flick of a switch, of course it's going to feel terrible when they come out. And when you're like this kid that's basically sitting on a curb homeless, it's the people that are going to eat you up and spit you out that are going to find you.
Yep.
It's really predatory people they can sniff those people up. And that's what happened to me. I ended up in this guy's house, and I mean, he didn't even live in this place. He'd leave for days at a time. I didn't have food. I was starving. And I looked really good back then. I looked real good, but I was starving. And he'd show up every 3 days or so. And I found out that he was going around seeing like 13-year-old boys, 14-year-old boys, 15-year-old
Oh,
boys.
wow.
And I was just another trophy in his, collection. And it was like, and he was the first big gay person I'd ever met. So this was my first impression of gay people as well. So I was just horrified. I was horrified. And I got to this point where, I had no one to talk to. I still didn't have internet there. I was like going around people's mailboxes and stealing their AOL free trial CDs so I could like get onto the internet for 60 minutes and try and talk to somebody. And then my time would be up. And I got to this point of just severe depression there, of just being alone and hungry and feeling like God didn't love me. And I was just like, well, I guess this is it then. Like, I'm broken. God made me broken. I was a mistake, is what I was thinking. Like, I really was just like a lemon that came out of the factory, and there was no point in going on if this is the way it was going to be. And since he was a cop, there were like guns laying around the house. And he'd been gone. So I decided that I was going to do it. I was going to kill myself. And, I had it on the table, and I had my cat with me too. And I was really, that cat held me grounded for a while because I was like, oh, what is she going to do without me? She's all alone. I feel so bad for her. But I set her aside. I was going to do it. I had the gun. And just as I had the gun, like right here, my phone rang and it was my mom finally calling me, my mom out of nowhere. And I put the gun down and I pick up the phone and she's crying on the phone. And she's like, I can't do this anymore. The elders can't tell me what to do. They can't keep me from talking to my own son. You were never even baptized, which was like the thing. Like non-baptized people shouldn't. This was outside of the rules that I had been shunned as hard as I was. And she said, I've fixed up a place for you. Please, will you come home? And I was like, yes, please. Yes. So she saved my life with that phone call. And like the next day she'd come up with a car and took me back gave me a little, it wasn't a great place to live. It was basically an office space, a bedroom in the back of an office, but it wasn't with that guy and it wasn't with anyone else. And I was very lucky that she respected my decisions about the religion and didn't try to bring me back. And eventually she ended up waking up as well. So I love my mom. Thanks, Mom.
Your mom's your savior, man. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, like, we don't give enough credit to
Mm-hmm.
our loved ones, our families, the humans around us. Instead, we want to look up and, imagine that there's this being, there's this father figure.
Exactly.
And so I actually was listening to a song recently that was on TikTok. It was funny. It was about a taco from Taco Bell or something. Hey, you're a good, good God. It's singing all this stuff and then how someone couldn't afford a taco. But notice they're like thanking this God for the things. And it's like flip a coin, good or bad will happen. Flip a coin. The thing is, my parents, I can account for all the times they saved my ass, and your mom just saved yours, man. That really means a lot. And then she woke up. Do you guys have talks once in a while about all this and looking back?
All the time. We probably talk about this way more than is healthy. Yeah, we talk all the time about this stuff. And it's hard to fully get away from it because my brother is in and out and in and out. He's like swings between like poverty and then he goes back to the witnesses and then he's good again and then he's back out. So it's hard to ever fully escape. That's what sucks. And I get people on the YouTube comments all the time like, why don't you just get over it, move on and live your life? It's like, you can't just, when you have family that are still shunning you or you have family that are still in or out and you care about and you're trying to help them, you can't be callous. You can't just get over it. It's a scar. It's always going to be there.
Yeah, you're right. With drug addiction, people tell me, dude, you're 5 years clean. Why are you making another video? Stop with the videos. And I'm like, my brother, at the time he was he's clean now. He's doing great. He's on his feet. My father relapsed alcoholism. I got him into rehab. Like, if I give up, someone might need the help, And so,
Yes.
yeah, I'm with you 100%. I want to ask something else though, that I think probes into what you're discussing here. And it's powerful. With the idea of your first guy that abused you and whatnot coming out, is that a kid in the background?
Did you hear her? I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
My cat, she does this thing where she drags her toy around and screams at the top of her lungs and she won't stop until you congratulate her for her kills. So
I think she's trying to be famous. Bring her on, man. Bring her on.
Yeah, good job, cat. Thank you.
I saw the cat tower behind you too, so that makes sense.
I'm so sorry. I knew she was going to do this.
You're fine. No, the cat had to say her piece, and we respect what you're saying. Okay, I'm not arguing with you one bit.
We're all very proud.
We are. So I got to say this. This is something I don't think I've ever heard you talk about on your shows, and I think it's important. Is one person's going to try and argue that maybe is an ex-Jehovah's Witness or is a Jehovah's Witness, and they go back and forth, or they are a staunch Jehovah's Witness, and they're going to go, "Didn't you see it when the abusive guy took you in? That's Jehovah trying to warn you. There's your punishment." But I want to follow through with that and say, yeah, that might have been a bad experience. You learned some tough situations and realize not everybody's nice. Not everybody is good, no matter what your sexual preferences. But I suspect you found a healthy relationship. You have found a healthy balance on realizing who is a healthy person to participate in this type of situation
Yes.
in. And maybe you can give a little bit on that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it goes back to what you said earlier. A lot of it, when people say things like that, they're taking the credit away from the people that really did save my life. It wasn't Jehovah that saved me. It wasn't Jehovah that did this. It was me. It was me making bad decisions because I didn't know any better. I didn't know how to identify a bad person because I was so sheltered. And it was my mom that saved me, not God. And it was me that got myself out of that situation. And now that I'm not so sheltered and I've encountered things like this, I feel like I'm a much stronger person now for what I have been through. And I can see through people that are trying to take advantage of me. And I know how to deal with people like that. And now I know how to avoid them and get away from them in a way that I never would have been able to as a Jehovah's Witness, to just, isolates like that. And now I'm in a great relationship.
Good for
That
you.
we've been together for 5 years now. We never fight. We never it's just great. It's much more healthy than any relationship I feel like I would have, because there's an alternate reality somewhere out there where I pretended like I prayed the gay away and I got married to a woman and I had a family, and I probably would have been, and I would have gone to Bethel, or I would have been a pioneer or an elder, and I would have been so unhappy, and I would have had this family and this wife, and I would still be dealing with the same thoughts. I'd still be jabbing myself in the thigh. I would still hate myself. And at some point in my life, I would eventually break down and I would be gay anyway. And I'd have a ruined family on top of it that I made.
Mm.
So it's just this alternate reality. This reality right here is much better than anything that the witnesses had in store for me. I don't know if I answered your question. I went off on a tangent there.
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people end up destroying families that they make because they're just trying to satisfy their parents, or someone expects them to be a certain way. And I was going to say that as you were thinking it in my head, I was thinking that too. Like, can you imagine being a Bethelite and then secretly on the side you're
Yeah.
picking up a prostitute or something because you're obsessing. But once you're freely allowing yourself to be human, like, the
Mhm.
obsession isn't there. Don't get me wrong. We obsess over things as humans, period. But that obsession, unless you've experienced it, you really can't describe it. It's literally becomes a fever in your body to a point where you can't do anything but think about it. And that's left ever since I've escaped. I literally I don't know if you've heard of Aaron Ra. He's an
Yeah.
atheist.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I wrote him on Skype recently. I said, dude, if you want to talk to somebody who literally attributes my skepticism and my doubting to saving my life, like becoming a skeptic, an atheist, someone who's really challenging what I once believed to saving my life, I'm in. Like, let me know if you're interested in hearing it, because I really think that release of letting this bondage, it's like a mental
Yes.
bondage, go. I'm not carrying a weight anymore. I don't have to worry. They say you don't have to worry. The Christians will say, no, 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 whom the Son sets free is free indeed. You're The Spirit of God's with you. You're good. There's free, there's happiness. That sounds good till you start realizing there are texts that say, like, unless you live a certain way, you're not really in. And Jehovah's Witnesses kind of have a works-based type of religion. So really you were already feeling it prior to me. But I came from a grace type background where it's like grace through faith and not of works. But if you're not really living like a Christian, how do you know you have the Spirit? And if you constantly are doing these things contrary to what you know the Holy Word of God says, how can you say you're a child of God? And I had doubts. And I always thought, I'm going to cook. God's wanting me on a skillet for eternity. That's because
Yeah.
I believed in predestination.
Uh-huh.
So in my head, I'm like, okay, am I predestined for this damnation that God is ordaining from the foundation of the world? I just can't quite get. It's insanity, bro. It's
It
insanity.
is.
So there's my tangent.
It was a good tangent.
Thank you, thank you. I really love that you came out. You say it. You're bold, man. Your name is bold. I mean, who wants to say they're mentally diseased other than Jeremy? No, no, but you're owning it, man. Right?
Well, and the gay community taught me a lot of that. That's another thing that's been, once I found like the gay community, it's been great. I mean, there's some crappy people in it, but overall, it's a community that's made up of people like us that have lost their families, they've been kicked out, and they had to find their own family. You
Mhm.
find your own family. These are all people that are finding family together, um, and that really helped me. And one of the things that gay people in particular have done over the years is reappropriate things and make them their own, like the term queer. Like when I was younger, when I was going through all of this, queer was a slur, and like that's
Mhm.
what people called you when they were about to kick the crap out of you. And so, we were like, the gay people were like, well, I don't think so. We're here, we're queer, and get over it.
Right.
And that's part of why I use mentally diseased too, and I'm very bold about it, because it's like, what are you gonna do now if I call myself mentally diseased? Like, they're just words,
You're
you
8
know?
Mile. You're Eminem on 8 Mile. I'm a piece of trailer white trash. Now what you gonna say about
What
me?
are you gonna say? Yeah, your words hold no power over me. And that's the biggest message I want to send, is don't let anybody else's words hold power over you. Be your own person, make your own decisions.
Yeah, I was thinking of that game back when we were kids, and this is a perfect example. Smear the queer. It was all like whoever had the football was the queer, and you got to smear them. And like, why did we even have that as a game? Because
Right.
of a society. So there is another dimension to this. Jehovah's Witnesses do it, sure, but I think the influence on our society is at large. Also, you had more than one battle to fight. You weren't just
Yeah.
fighting the religious, which is damn, that's a battle,
Yeah.
bro. Like how you made it out of that is hard. But now you're facing a society that looks at you as like, what, dude, there's something wrong with you. So now you
Right.
have
Everyone was
multiple.
telling you. Yeah, everyone was telling you that there was something wrong with you. The world was telling you there's something wrong with you. Everyone was telling you there's something wrong with you. And I think that, like, there's got to give so much credit to people in this whole community that have grown up in an environment like that, where everyone is telling you there's something wrong with you, and everyone is telling you that you're worthy of death or hellfire or death in Armageddon or whatever, and to pull through it and be really successful people regardless. I love the gay community. I love gay people. I think that we're just awesome, strong people.
Some of the happiest people I've ever met. I wish I was half as happy as gay people are, man.
We know how to throw a party.
That's true. Who did this? Ralphie May talked about it. Stand-up comedian. He said, I went to a straight wedding, and I will never go to another straight wedding again. He said, but I went to a gay wedding, and they know what they're doing. And it was so funny, man. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this: have you encountered any Jehovah's Witnesses since you've left? And what words did they have to exchange with you?
I have. It's been interesting. So I was working at I worked as a waiter for many, many years. And they actually built, it was a breakfast place. It was Village Inn, a local Colorado place. Um, they built a Jehovah's Witness convention center right across the street, basically, which I was like quaking when I saw that thing go up. I'm like, no, you've got to be kidding me. How are they building a convention center here? And once that thing was built, every single weekend we would have this rush of Jehovah's Witnesses come in for breakfast before the convention every weekend. It was like PTSD, man. Going to 4th of July after Vietnam is what it felt like. Just surrounded by witnesses and like being real nice to them. And they're nice people. They
Yes.
they are nice. And so they talked to me. Sometimes somebody would recognize me and they were nice, but not really inquisitive as to my well-being as a human being. Sometimes I had one lady who was a regular at that restaurant, and she found out that I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, and that got really awkward, because she got kind of stalkery, and I found out eventually that she'd been spying on me for my dad, and she kept like leaving me watchtowers and awakes and inviting me to the memorial. And she started the we had this service aisle, and the end of the service aisle looked out on this one table, and she always sat at this one table so that she could look down the service aisle and watch like my entire shift. She would sit there. It was really weird. I ended up like leaving and transferring to another place specifically because of this person. And she was nice, but it
Yeah.
was just creepy. Like, what are you telling are you telling the elders? Are you telling, like, what?
Wow, I had a show I just did with Ashley Campbell, and she was talking about Smurfs and how they view the Smurfs and like
Oh
different.
yeah.
Yeah, she was talking about that, but I guess in that question of like witches and spirits and demons and things like that, do they have a teaching that you have a spirit because you are a practicing homosexual? And is that okay to say that term? Because I don't know what I honestly don't know what's okay to use that term, if you will. Like, is that all right that I say that?
Yeah, that's fine.
What is the typical term so I can start using the correct term for the community?
I just openly gay, I
Yeah.
guess.
Okay.
Openly gay. Homosexual is it's kind of weird. Like, it's not really derogatory, but there's like this connotation with homosexual that it's usually used by Christians that the homosexuals, So
You homo sapiens, you.
or just call us gay. It's fine. What was the question?
Do you have a spirit according to Jehovah's Witnesses?
Oh, um, technically, so it's difficult to explain, but witnesses believe that Satan and the demons are on Earth right now, and they've been on Earth since 1914. They believe that there was a great war in heaven, and Jesus cast Satan and the demons out onto Earth because they don't believe in hell. That's the big thing. So Earth is hell, basically. And the demons are lurking everywhere. They're lurking in your Lord of the Rings DVDs, gonna get you. They're gonna get you out of Pikachu the Pokemon. And if you fall the wayside, if you get disfellowshipped or you become gay, they think that Satan's got a hold of you. It's not necessarily that you've been possessed, but it's kind of like you've been possessed. Like you've just been hollowed out, and now you're a puppet of Satan's. The demons got you. They're very superstitious, very superstitious.
Now,
Which was
oh, sorry.
another weird part about growing up. I
Yeah.
hallucinated a lot. I had sleep paralysis. I had a lot of supernatural experiences, and it was spooky.
That's I have to admit, I'm the same way. Like, I had a lot of experiences. I tell people today I have a lot of experiences. However, I don't, now looking back, realize the brain's a powerful thing, guys. Like the
Yes.
brain, dreams, things like that. Those are powerful things. That does not mean that it proves any of this stuff. A subjective personal experience of something like that that doesn't even mean that there's a metaphysical being out there. Okay. Doesn't mean there's not. It doesn't mean there is. And that, trying to explain that to someone who's a Christian, like my sister-in-law that I talk to all the time, and I love her to death. Most of my family are Christians. But when we have the conversation, I love to have that conversation, and because it's just something I love to talk about. And she's well, I've had an experience of Jesus. I said, me too, like multiple, like I probably can't even count how many I've had. Well, then what are you doing? I know the brain is powerful. Our emotions are powerful, connecting things that aren't relatable or connectable. Like back in the ancient times, I'll just give you a quick thing. When they observed the stars for survival, oftentimes hunter-gatherers, whatnot, they'd watch the stars, or agricultural, civilizations would watch the stars to know when to plant, when to crop, when to harvest, all those things. They looked at Venus as if it had power of life, because when Venus came up in the sky every year at a certain time, green started showing up on planet Earth. Venus brought life, and they think
Right.
they connect those dots. Well, we humans do the same thing today in different ways. Oh, I had a warm, fuzzy feeling. Jesus. It was Jesus from that book that's 2,000 years old.
Right. And it's all part of what we were talking about earlier. So much of it is giving credit to these beings that don't exist rather than giving credit to yourself, because it's your brain doing it. Your brain is super powerful. I actually really like to hear people's supernatural experiences. Like, I know that they're not real, but I think that it's a very good indicator of like who they are and what they're going through. Like, what is this thing that they saw and what did they perceive it to mean is very interesting to me. It's just, and it's your brain that's doing it. It's not Jesus or God. It's not Satan or the demons. And once you understand that it's you that are capable of doing these things, it's you that can pull this off. Like, what if you actually harness this for yourself? What if you actually took control of this? What if, like, I don't know, like, I use this for my creativity. I like to write. I like to tell stories. So I like to let myself go sometimes and see where my brain takes me and see what it's and that's something that witnesses tamper down. They don't want you to be creative. They don't want you to do all of this. So I just feel so free in so many ways now that I understand how all of these things work, and I've given myself credit and agency to be able to do things. It's a great life, much better life.
That is awesome. I got one more really good question. I think this is a good question, and
Okay.
maybe you could say I got a better answer for something else. I don't know. The apocalypse. You and me grew up with a fear. We grew up with a real fear. For me, as a young man, I'm already, about to get married. I was 17 when I was about to marry my wife. We had to get papers signed by her mom to give her rights over to her daughter, to me, to marry her. She was 16, turning 17. I
Wow.
was 17, turning 18.
Wow.
And we got married at that age, and because I had a child. I mean, I had got her pregnant, everything, and religious speaking, like, that was the next right thing to do, was to marry the
Right.
girl, and I did. And I mean, like, the other day, I had to tell someone on my channel. They're like, "You've been married for 15 years. How old are you?" And I'm like, 32 years old. Listen, I know. And they're like, "What the hell?" So I say that to say, like, I didn't even want to bring children into this world because, why would I do that to my kids? Like, that, I'm a
Right.
horrible parent to do that. And that apocalypse, that idea is what actually was my final last stand in Christianity. I was about to find out the truth about the coming of Jesus, right? For me, it was this movement called full preterism, and I knew the end was about to happen because in the first century, Jesus said, it's about to happen. Some of you standing here won't even die till you see the Son of Man come. When I found that out, I was like, you mean everybody's looking forward to it? And it was something that he was saying was supposed to happen back then? That made me realize, okay, what I'm studying is like taking me out of the church. It's recognizing Jesus doesn't even agree with the church. So now we got a problem. For you, were there any doctrines? Your exit wasn't a theological one. It wasn't a ha ha ha, I found out doctrines were wrong, because it's all the bubble you knew. But now that you're out of the bubble and you're no longer a Jehovah's Witness, did you research some shit and say, wow, that doesn't add up? Like, did you ever get curious and look at some theology stuff and say, that doesn't work, and I found some dubious stuff about this whole religion?
Yeah, a lot of things. Well, I mean, we all know Jehovah's Witnesses are the thing they're known for best, besides knocking on doors, is their failed Armageddon prophecies. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think they predicted it in 1914, 1975, sometime in the late 1800s as well. And one of their doctrines when I was growing up was that, and I still remember this magazine. I think it was an Awake magazine, and it said millions now living will never die. And it had this picture of all of these people that were born in the year 1914. And that was what I grew up being taught, was that the end is going to come before all of these people die. And I left before that happened, and I hadn't really thought about it for a while, and then I looked back and I'm like, what are they teaching now? Because those people are all dead. All those people are dead now. And I went back to see, and I saw that they changed their teachings again, and now they have this crazy thing about, oh, we met this whole time, it was overlapping generations, which I couldn't explain this crap to you. If you don't, I have no idea. I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. And part of their end times prophecies were all of these things about the United Nations and like Babylon the Great and the harlot, and the world is going to call for peace and security. And they really demonized, like, Catholics, and the United Nations were like the greatest enemies on the freaking planet. They hated Catholics in the United Nations. And then I found out that they were associated with the United Nations for several years, during the decade where they were telling me how horrible the United Nations were. That blew my freaking mind. I could not believe that they were, what is it, an NGO associate or something like that. But that, I think that was the biggest thing that blew my mind because of how much they drilled that into our heads. We had book studies over this every week, and I had to like come up with these answers and comments and like speeches about the United Nations, and here they were that whole time. It's just nuts. So
Wow.
that was the biggest thing for me. They've done a lot of things though. And then like just reading the actual Bible, I went through this phase where I was like, well, I'm going to have my own relationship with God, and I don't need a relationship, or I don't need organized religion to have a relationship with God. I can just read the Bible myself. And if God is there, then we'll have a great relationship. Like there's no reason I need them. And I read the whole Bible, but cover to cover, and it just doesn't stand up. And like reading it cover to cover is a very different experience than flipping through and cherry picking whatever scripture supports whatever you're trying to say at the moment. It contradicts itself. It's two different gods basically in the Old Testament and the New Testament. You got the Old Testament tyrant that's an asshole and wants everyone to die, and then suddenly he's like super loving in the New Testament and just, you know, he's a hippie. Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there's a lot there, and we have a lot in common, man. We have a lot in common. I did the same thing, and then it was for me. It wasn't just the Bible. I started thinking, well, God's showing all these cultures and religions across the world. That's why they're so common. There's so much in common between them. You know, God's really just kind of like it was like the six wise men of Hindustan. If you've ever heard the poem, Six Wise Men of Hindustan, to learning much inclined, who all went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind. And they all like give a description of God, which is the elephant, but none of them know it's an elephant. And they're all arguing at the end, and he's like, they dispute, you know, long and hard, and you know, they're all partly in the right, though all of them are wrong. And so that was like religions for me. But then I realized, like, okay, hold on, are there natural explanations for these things? And the natural is what really started to catch on for me. It was like, you mean there's answers, like not just like, you know, I was reading Job the other day to my sister-in-law, reading Job 39:40, you know, the suffering servant Job, and he's like, God's arguing with Job saying, uh, do you know how the lightning bolt in the thunder cloud darkens at my appearance? And do you feed the birds in the mountains on high? Like, you know, just things like that we know, like, actually we can explain how precipitation works and how magnetic
Right.
fields cause electricity, and like all of that stuff can be explained. Whereas there it was Yahweh that was trying to tell Job, I did it. And were you there when the foundations of the earth were laying, flat earth? Okay, let's stop. You know, let's.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I'm with you, brother, and I really do appreciate you doing this. If there's anything you want to say to someone right now who's obviously, if they're in it, they're not going to hear you. They're not going to listen. But if they're sitting on the fence, Jeremy, and they're broken, man. They're scared. They're afraid to take that leap, like you did. What would you like to say to them?
I think that it's worth taking the leap to meet your authentic self. When you are a Jehovah's Witness, you don't really know yourself because you're hiding it. You're burying yourself. You don't let that person that is you come out to play ever. You don't know that person. So it's definitely worth meeting that amazing, incredible person that you are and living authentically. And you know, you're not going to live forever. That's the biggest thing, is they think they're living forever, and you're not. You have X amount of time on this earth, and you should live every moment of that just being true to yourself and living exactly the way you are. And I don't even care what you believe. I don't really care if you leave witnesses and keep believing their doctrine. I don't care. That's totally your prerogative. But no group of men that have never met you should have that much control over every aspect of your life. Live for yourself, make your own decisions, research other religions, you know, do that, but most importantly, be you.
Thank you so much, man. I really do appreciate you joining me here on MythVision Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I say the same thing. Live your life and try and find out. Be critical. Be critical. Check things out. Test it. See what you find out. You might be shocked to see what you find. And make sure you go to his channel, Mentally Diseased. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. He is going to continue to publish more material so you guys can learn from him. Jeremy, once again, man, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to have done this.
This was amazing. So thank you so much. Love you guys. And never forget, man, if you've already forgotten, I have to remind you, we are MythVision.
I have hundreds of videos on the Patreon. Become a patron and get early access to everything I ever launch. Join the Twitter. I've got a Discord chat room. You guys can help grow the community. One-time PayPal or Cash App if you want to help us out with a donation. And join our Facebook groups, man. Let's make this thing happen.